Hello everybody, I hope you are doing great today. My partners Mariana, Roberto, and I are going to be talking about the short story The Outsider. Specifically, we're going to be analyzing it in terms of setting and character. But before we delve into it, let's take a look at some relevant aspects of this story. First of all, The Outsider was written by Howard Phillips Lovecraft around 1921, but it was published until 1926. The genre of the story is horror. It has one main character who is the protagonist, which is described through the narration, and the name of this character isn't known. As the theory book explains, sometimes the lack of a name can be equated to a lack of identity, but we will refer to this later on. Having said this, we can start analyzing how the setting reveals more about the personality and physical appearance of this dynamic and round character. As I said before, we're going to be analyzing the story in terms of setting and character. So the thesis that we are going to be demonstrating during this presentation is the next one. In the short story The Outsider by Lovecraft, the setting constructs characterization by revealing the emotions and physical appearance of the main character. So basically we're going to be seeing this connection between setting and character. So now let's begin with the analysis. So basically, the story starts with the main character describing the unhappiness of someone whose memories of childhood brings only fear and sadness. And after that, the character makes the first reference to the setting. Basically, he says that wretched is someone who remembers being alone for hours in dismal places of grotesque trees. In these couple of references, we can start noticing this connection between the setting and the character, and also how the character perceives the place that surrounds him. Though up to this point, we cannot be 100% sure if the character is talking about himself, but later we can see how the character describes himself by using these kind of depressing words like the dazed, the disappointed, the barren, and the broken. And he seems to think that his misery is due to the gods. So now that the character has given the reference to the setting and has described himself, we could think that this dismal and grotesque place has something to do with the feelings of the character. So basically, there is a relation between the place and what he describes as a curse, but at some point he has gotten used to it. So, if we keep reading, we can find out that the character doesn't even know where he was born, and he only remembers the horrible place in which he spent the childhood. This place is an old castle surrounded by a dark forest, and this castle has high ceilings and is full of dark passages with spider webs and shadows, and the character says that there is an accursed smell everywhere. And we can see how the character emphasizes that everything about this place is disgusting and gloomy. Also, the protagonist doesn't even know how many years he has lived there, and he doesn't even recall any living creature but himself. But he can't forget this awful place with rats and bats and spiders. So this gloomy forest surrounding the castle and all the darkness portrayed in this setting have influenced the character to have an intense desire to see the natural light, because in this place there is no natural light. So this is another way in which the setting has a connection with the character and makes him make the decision to leave this place later. Also, through the setting, we can perceive that more of the character's feelings are revealed. For example, we can see that he feels like a prisoner in this castle because he describes how once he tried to escape, but as he went farther in the forest, the shade grew denser and the environment made him feel afraid, so he had to go back. Basically, the characteristics portrayed in the setting stop him from leaving the place, as if he were not allowed to leave the place. Okay, so in addition, the same lowliness of the setting has made the character search for a way to learn everything that he knows by himself. For example, he considers that he is similar to one of the people that are painted in one of the moldy books. Also, this loneliness can be the reason why he doesn't mention his name, and maybe he doesn't even have a name, because if we think about it, there is no use in having a name if there are no people to call you by your name. So now let's take a look at this little fragment from the book to continue with the analysis. In the shadowy solitude, my longing for light grew so frantic that I could rest no more. Basically, after the character says this, he starts climbing the dangerous tower that, according to him, is the only place that the light touches the castle. And with this fragment of the reading, we could infer that the shadowy solitude of the setting has been like a trigger for his decision to climb the tower, right? And up to this point, we can see how the characteristics of the setting continue to be like an obstacle for him. And it is like if it were trying to stop him from climbing because of how the character describes the poor conditions of the tower and that it is a dangerous place. And he also says that he has to climb it slowly because of the darkness in the tower. Also, in the next sentences, we can perceive the anguish of the character. I shivered as I wondered why I didn't reach the light. And this one, finding it stone and immovable. Once again, we can see how the setting is influencing the character's emotions. And now Mariana will continue with the analysis by explaining how a new setting will construct new experiences and emotions in the main character.
Thank you. As Anila mentioned, the setting reinforces the atmosphere of horror of this short story, and it also reveals new information about this character. To continue with the story, one day the protagonist was able to reach the highest tower of the castle because it was determined to look for the first time upon the sky, the stars, and the moon. And at this point, we have a new setting that triggers unexpected emotions in this character. There was a radiant full moon, and the protagonist describes this element as the purest ecstasy it has ever known. And this was the type of light that this character was looking for. And when it was finally in front of this full moon, it felt excitement and terror. And the words this character uses to explain how it feels are nothing I had before undergone could compare in terror with what I now saw. This shows how complex the personality of this protagonist is. Every time it discovers new places, there is a mixture of emotions that this character cannot even explain. Nevertheless, this encourages the character to crave even for more light, and that's when the protagonist explicitly says, I neither knew nor cared whether my experience was insanity, dreaming, or magic, but was determined to gaze on brilliance and gaiety at any cost. And this is a big change for this character, because at the beginning we have this pessimistic living creature that was used to be alone in the dark, but now we see a new attitude that was a result of this encounter with that wonderful setting full of light. And it seems that this character is ready to be free and to be happy. And this leads the protagonist to venture into the unknown, to cross the river and reach what it describes as a wonderful castle with a lot of light. And this new setting reveals a shocking reality. Previously, we referred to how the setting affects this character emotionally, but now this new setting reveals new information about its physical appearance. In the castle, there are humans dancing and having fun, and these characters gets closer to see what they are doing. And as soon as the protagonist is inside the castle, it realizes that there is something wrong about its appearance. And after that, the nightmare began because humans started crying, yelling, and even some of them fainted. So there was chaos in that castle, and we consider that these people inside the castle are the antagonists, and also flawed characters because their function in this story is to enhance the traits of the protagonist. So through the narration, we have seen some hints that shows that there is something unusual about this character, but thanks to this setting and thanks to these people, the monstrosity of this character is highlighted. And now Roberto will expand how a particular element in this setting, in this case a mirror, finally reveals the true nature of this main character.
Thank you, Mariana. Yes, the setting now is a type of party where the secondary characters are screaming and running away in fear, causing the protagonist to understand that there is a monster somewhere near which causes people to escape, making the protagonist itself to tremble with fear. Well, the protagonist goes to another room which has a golden arch with an entrance to another room which looks exactly like the first one. When the protagonist is approaching it, under the golden arch appears a monster which is described in this way. It says that it's unclean, uncanny, unwelcome, abnormal, detestable. The novel says that is a gully shade of decay, antiquity, and desolation. It also states that God knows it was no of this world, or no longer of this world. Here our thesis is shown again because this new setting paralyzes the protagonist, who upon noticing certain confusion in the monster approaches him. He raises his hand and makes contact with the monster, which is still under the golden arch. Now the protagonist in shock starts to remember its own past, which it had decided to forget. It remembers when it hid itself in the first setting that we saw in the story. Finally, the real setting of the room where the protagonist is revealed, where the golden arch is nothing more than a mirror, and the monster is just the reflection of the same protagonist. As a conclusion, at the beginning we stated that the setting reveals the personality and the physical appearance of the protagonist. In summary, we talked about three main settings. The first one is the desolated place where the protagonist has lived for an indefinite period of time. It is a dark, sinister, ugly, and dirty castle with no more company than corpses, spiders, bats, and rats. This place pairs perfectly with the protagonist's personality, which is unhappy, which is lonely, which is tired, which is depressed, and which is indifferent. The second setting in the story is the dark forest. The protagonist is afraid of it. It has avoided the protagonist to escape from where the protagonist is all this time. And finally, the third and the most important setting that reveals the protagonist's physical appearance is the party, the people running, and the room with the mirror, which reveals that the protagonist in fact is a horrible monster. Thanks for paying attention.